Greetings and welcome to our lecture number 3 on Mesoamerica, the Aztecs. This particular unit, we'll be talking about the rise of the Aztecs, the fact that they were there just right after the Olmecs were around, and how they came back later on, around 900 AD, and started another empire around that time period as well. As normal, please make sure you have your Chart 1 worksheet with you today. We are working on the third row on that chart, dealing with the environment and the politics and all that stuff. So make sure you have that available as well and filling that out as we go forward. Feel free to use your book with that chart as well as the movie that we've used in the past, movie 2, I believe, to help you along as well. So with that, let's get started. Here's the region we're looking at. We're looking at the middle of Mexico, known as the Valley of Mexico. This particular region here, in green, is the entire empire of the Aztecs at its height. Here, if you look at the zoomed-in version, you'll see the capital city of Tenochtitlan, which is actually an island city that they created. If you read your book, it kind of tells you the story on how that the people actually came from. Later on, when it was resettled, people came from northern Mexico down. They were told that the gods would provide them a sign to inform them of where they're going to settle. And according to legend, the sign that they found was at this particular island. And from there is where their empire began. So, a little bit about the environment. Here's kind of a picture of the lake. It is in the Valley of Mexico, which actually lies, if you look on our satellite map here, right between two sets of mountains to the left and to the right. And you got this Lake Texcoco in the middle. This particular area, because it is in the valley, is actually about 7,500 feet above sea level. So it's very high, very cool, but it's very lush with agriculture, trees, things like that. So it's a very great place to have agriculture, planting, things like that. There were several shallow lakes, which also assisted them in their agriculture, which we'll talk about later. And again, as I just mentioned, it took place on and around Lake Texcoco, is where a lot of these little cities were, including their major city on the middle island here. So, the two main cities are listed here. I'll try and pronounce them. Tenochtitlan and Tenochtitlan. Okay, those are the two major cities. One was used primarily as the government city as well as residential, and that was the top one here, Tenochtitlan. And the bottom city that we see as Tenochtitlan, however, was like a trade center where a lot of people went to trade their goods. So, the language. The written language, they use pictographs or glyphs, which we've seen before. You'll kind of get a picture of what they're looking at here. Their system of writing was not that complete. They had difficulty getting certain ideas across. So you might have a lot of different glyphs to get one idea across because it wasn't a very complete type of system. They did have codexes, just like the Mayans, and most of the codex, though, were burned by Spanish clergy, mainly because they wanted the clergy wanted the Aztecs to convert to Christianity, and they basically tried to do away with all types of history, all types of references to the different gods that they practiced. They had over 1,000 gods that they believed in. So any type of reference to any of these gods would have been destroyed by the Spanish clergy in an effort to convert the Aztecs to Christianity. The economy. They demanded tributes from those they conquered. So as they went off and around the region, they would go, they would fight, they would take over more land, but instead of destroying it and taking over the land for themselves, they would let the people stay there but demand a tribute. Simply, it's like a tax. So every year or every once in a while, they would say, we're going to tax you this much every year, or we're going to demand this type of resource from you every year. And that was the way to kind of promise saying, we will let you do what you want to do so long as you pay us tribute every year or every season, or whenever it was. One of the other types of things they traded was something known as obsidian. Obsidian is basically, it's a volcanic rock. It looks like a crystal almost, but it's made from a volcano, dried up volcano rocks. Very pretty, very light rock, but a very pretty rock. And they would use those and trade those as a type of money system. The government. They created what became known as the Triple Alliance. That's what we call it. It was the Aztecs, the Texcoco, and the Tlacopan, if I pronounced that right. These three together worked together, didn't conquer each other. They had their own rulers, their own leadership in government, but they worked together. And by working together, they were able to conquer all of their enemies, obviously in the region, and take over a large chunk of present-day Mexico. Of the three, there was a supreme emperor who was at the top. Here we see a picture of Montezuma, who was one of the last leaders before the downfall of the Aztec Empire. I mentioned downfall under Montezuma because when he became leader, he actually demanded more tributes from the outside realms. And a lot of the people that lived out there started revolting. They did not like having to pay all these extra tributes. Basically, it's the equivalent of raising your taxes. Obviously, people were revolting. They didn't like the idea. Eventually, Montezuma, after being embattled with the people, realizing that he was in trouble if he didn't change something, he was kind of forced to change his mind and say, okay, fine, I'm not going to charge you as much tax. However, I'm going to get rid of some of the government people so that I get to keep what they would normally get. Because the tributes wouldn't go just to the king, it would go to the government as well. If you get rid of some of the government leaders, well, then you don't have to pay them, and he can keep the money. So a lot of people kind of saw through this, and by that time it was kind of too late, and the people continued to revolt, and eventually it started breaking up the empire as they had it. The religion of the Aztecs. There was polytheistic. They had over 1,000 gods. They had these large temples, mainly to the sun god and the rain god. And some of the things they would do is obviously sacrifice human offerings, heart, blood, to the different gods. They would offer dramas, they would sing songs, have dances, and obviously make human sacrifices by cutting out human hearts. There's actually stories where after they would cut out the human hearts, they would take the bodies and literally kick them down the stairs, bleeding everybody out. So it would be a very messy day. Sometimes they would do this all the time. One of the things under Montezuma, he would actually do that. He actually got more slaves, more people to make these sacrifices. So it was not uncommon for them to sacrifice hundreds of people a day during certain parts of the year to the sun god. Achievements. The Aztecs, they created two main calendar systems. One calendar system, very similar to ours. They realized that there was a 365 days a year. There was a calendar basically for everyday people, and then there was a calendar for religious purposes. One of the other main achievements, it's actually one achievement, but has a couple different parts. The city, Tenochtitlan, was actually a planned city. So what we mean by that is they didn't just come in there and set down their stuff anywhere they wanted to. The leaders actually strategically put different parts of town in certain places. So you had kind of like a downtown area where it was government buildings. You had a farming area where it was just farming and crops. These floating gardens called chinapas, which were kind of on the outskirts of town. You'd have these castaways. There were actually three main castaways that would lead from outside of the city to inside of the main city. Everything was set up in kind of like square blocks. So these cities were planned for a specific purpose, to get the most use out of the land without wasting any room. You can kind of see a picture of the chinapas down here on the left picture, where they would actually have these floating boats, and on these boats you would actually they would have their crops. because the water was there. It's basically aquaponics, which we do here at the school here, using the water as a way to create and harvest food. This was one of the early uses of aquaponics, actually. Obviously, they didn't call it that, but that's basically what it was. And with that, we are done. I hope you enjoyed the lecture. And if you have any questions, as always, please let me know. I'll be more than willing to help. I'm here I'm here during Friday during lunch, third lunch, if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.